Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of
Startup Chat.
I'm Afshin
I'm
Deuce.
Mo.
Hi, Mo.
Hello.
So, Mo, in the last few episodes,
Mhm.
we chatted about the elements in a pitch. We also took a little bit of a tangent from it. We
Mhm.
kind of deviated from that focus and
Yes.
added more elements into it.
Exactly.
But I want to come back to the pitch.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there's much more about the pitch we can talk about, like the competitors and like stuff like that, right?
Yes.
We've kind of touched on them, but not in depth. But I wanted to talk about the exit.
Wow. Okay.
so, so I want to know what is your opinion, first of all, about even talking about the exit in the pitch, or we shouldn't. One, and two, if we want to talk about the exit, how do we position it so
Mhm.
that people don't think we are in for a quick buck,
Mhm.
rather than build something impactful, grand, scalable, and worry about everything else later,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So how do you keep that balance?
I think it's necessary to talk about exit in your pitch deck, and it's somehow, uh, especially if it's an investor pitch, it shows that you are respecting your audience, your investors. That yes, I have researched very well, and I am partially know how we can exit on this startup. If there is no exit, they may ask and create some stories for themselves how they might exit. But as a founder that has done his research very well, he can give some assumption. Based
Mm-hmm.
on my assumption, I believe there is a higher chance for acquisition
Mm-hmm.
or IPO. I
Okay.
think there should be,
Mm-hmm.
but it depends.
Okay. What does it depend on?
What is the business we are talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the business are not acquisition type, or some of them are not IPO type.
Okay. So we're talking within the context of a startup.
Yes.
And usually, when we talk about startups, there are startups that are tech oriented
Mostly.
mostly.
Yes.
And so, tech oriented startups at a certain point need the help of a bigger entity
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons. It might be to protect their IP, it might be to create a win win situation with a strategic partner.
Yes.
It could be creating liquidity for those loyal investors who invested with you and patiently waited for years and years, and
Mm-hmm.
now they might want to have liquidity on that
Yes.
added value that has been created, right? So there are various reasons, right? But when would it not be suitable to talk about an exit? Can you think of an instance where you say, okay, I want to create liquidity for my
Mm-hmm.
investors, but I want to exit the business? How do I create that liquidity without exiting the business while still holding everything intact in house?
Interesting. I never thought about it like this. Do you have any answer for that?
I could think of a few things. I want
Okay.
to know your opinion, but let me tell you what I think.
Okay.
Uh, there are options to buy back investor shares
Mm-hmm.
at times. So the option exists for somebody to go out there and say, hey, we've made good money
Mm-hmm.
and our investors here want to liquidate their shares. So why doesn't the company buy back some of the shares at today's value? So anybody who wants to exit or have a liquidation event, they can have it.
Okay.
Or maybe another investor wouldn't mind coming in and buying some of those shares, creating liquidity for those investors and replacing them.
Yes.
So all those could be options that could exist.
Mm-hmm.
Investors might have the opportunity to sell their shares to each other too, if some people want to
Okay.
increase their ownership. Or if the company is not publicly listed, it is still possible to create a mini liquidity event within the company
Okay.
by maybe borrowing some money and paying out some people who want to cash out.
So it's another fundraising event or something like that.
It could be.
Mm-hmm.
It could very well be another fundraising event.
Okay.
It could be called a liquidity event.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a strategic partner who would come in and would say, hey, I want to buy shares. We say, well, I don't want to liquidate myself. Okay, why don't you talk to some of your current investors?
Okay.
Maybe I can make them an offer and they'll be happy to sell me their shares, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of those options are on the table that you can play with sometimes, as long as you have investors, because then there are those companies who've never had an investor and it's just the owner themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you have investors, I believe those options would give the investor that peace of mind that, okay, if I want to cash out, I can. And it's important to have those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're talking very advanced when the startup has progress and they have a peace of mind
Yes.
to think about such a thing.
Yes.
But I'm thinking about the very early days in a startup when they want to talk about exit on their pitch.
Yes.
So that's a little bit different.
It is. I agree. So the exits on a pitch, I think, gives some of those investors who are liquidity oriented. They say, like every investor is, by the way, to a certain degree, but some might be a whole lot more. It gives them that foresight that, yes, we have a plan in the future that will lead to liquidity. And sometimes that plan to liquidity can actually be a very compelling reason to get investments in the door.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you could come out and say, with what we are creating, we are actually filling a void in this market, and we believe we are solving a problem for these big entities.
Yes.
And as soon as they see how well we've solved that problem for them, we could be a very good target for them to acquire us. Mm-hmm. Because then they would have the market and would have the solution, and that's a perfect marriage for a strategic acquisition, and that could help us grow exponentially. So those conversations actually motivate investors to get engaged, and maybe at a higher level than or they originally planned to. Mm-hmm. So then the question becomes, what are the options for an exit?
Okay.
You mentioned two of them.
Yes.
IPOs.
IPO, acquisition.
Yeah.
Sometimes big entities come and acquire you. Sometimes they come and acquire you.
Acquire you. I love that word. Yes. So they could acquire you for different reasons.
Yes.
It could be for the team. Mm-hmm. It could be for the technology. It could be just to make sure a competitor won't have access to you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So there are different motivations for acquisition. So there are mergers, acquisitions, IPOs, buybacks, liquidity events, share swaps, whatever, right? There are different kinds of creating liquidity. So I guess from our conversation, I kind of get the hint and the conclusion that it is good to talk about an exit in the pitch, but you have to really have something meaningful to say, not just talk about, hey, these are the 4 things we might think about in the future. Like that would be a boilerplate kind of conversation. But rather than doing it that way, try to see who might benefit from acquiring you and why. What problem are you solving for a very big entity that would prompt them to come in and say, hey, I love what you're doing, and I can put a rocket booster on you and all of a sudden make you go exponentially bigger. Exactly. So let's talk about a win-win situation. And if you can articulate that very well with multiple options, then you're mapping a very feasible exit down the road. And that gives you focus on how to move forward too. Great. Anything
Perfect.
else you want to add to this?
No, I think it's good enough.
Okay, well, once again, thank you for being with us, for listening to us, for watching us. Please do like us and follow us if you wish. And we would love to hear from you, your opinions, and any ideas you might have about future subjects that you'd like us to talk about. For now, have a great day.
See you.